We are projecting, though, that Donald Trump has won the state of New Hampshire in the Republican presidential primary.
While we wait for him to take the stage, we want to send things over to Haley Bull, who is with the Trump campaign in Nashua tonight. Haley, how confident were they going into this, and what's the mood like there as this is starting to get called and these results keep coming in?
Hey, good evening. Well, this watch party has certainly filled up behind us, and we know heading into this evening, the Trump team really portrayed a sense of optimism and confidence, really sharing a message that with securing a win, they were looking for the party to essentially fold in line behind Trump and shape this as a race between him and President Joe Biden rather than him and Nikki Haley. And he went into this in New Hampshire despite the increased weight in the moderate vote and Haley shaving away a little bit of support, picking up some ground with significant leads in primary polling, significant new endorsements, including from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. And notably throughout this evening, amid that higher than anticipated voter turnout, we saw Trump double down on a message that he really laid the groundwork for here in New Hampshire the past few days, taking aim at New Hampshire's primary process. Trump writing on Truth Social, we can show that post, calling the process ridiculous, saying, quote, especially since crooked Joe Biden has abandoned New Hampshire, but word is we are doing really well. That post shared a little after 6 p.m. The question here was really if Nikki Haley was able to shave away any momentum from Trump. We saw Trump undoubtedly sharpen his criticism of her, and despite that confidence, downplay any concern when he was asked earlier today about Nikki Haley, saying he didn't care if she stayed in the race or dropped out. Listen.
I don't care if she stays there. Let her do whatever she wants. It doesn't matter. I can just say that there's never been a movement like this. Make America great again. In the history of our country.
And of course, Trump has really been buoyed by a group of enthusiastic supporters, a base of enthusiastic supporters now carrying that momentum from Iowa into New Hampshire, where we're at the watch party, waiting to hear from him a little later, guys.
That's Haley Bull with the Trump campaign in New Hampshire. Thank you, Haley. And to give us a little bit more insight into this primary and into these results as they're coming in, Scripps News political director Andrew Rafferty. He's live in our Atlanta studios. Andrew, what can you tell us about these results?
Yeah, well, look, what happened, Serena, is that Donald Trump, even though we only have less than 20% of the total estimated vote in, Donald Trump is just running strong in some of those counties that were key townships and areas where he may have actually had more competition in 2016 or where he had certain metrics that he had to hit. And that's why, and you continue to look at what we knew going into tonight, we're able to make this call right as polls close. But that doesn't mean that the drama is over. We have some major question marks that we are going to continue to see. There's some areas of the state which are still favorable to Nikki Haley, not favorable enough for her to overcome and win. We would not have projected this result if that were the case, but perhaps favorable enough to continue her campaign. And again, that's the big question mark, is the margin here. It is now a one-on-one race, exactly what Nikki Haley had wanted this entire campaign. And this is her best shot to really get close. And if you heard sort of the campaign rhetoric, both from her and her top supporter in that state, Governor Chris Sununu, the idea was, well, they wouldn't really set expectations, but we do know that getting within single digits to Donald Trump, especially considered she tried in Iowa last week on the last final weeks and was still lost by 30 points. You almost need to get within single digits to continue this viability argument. And so that's the key thing we're going to be watching over the next couple hours. Again, it's just about 1/4 of the total vote, less than that, has come in so far, closer to 1/5. But there's still some high drama about what this means for the rest of the Republican presidential primary and exactly which candidates remain in the race.
Scripps News political director Andrew Rafferty. Thank you, Andrew. We'll check back in with you soon. I'm going to toss it back over to Maritza and Dell.
You know, what's fascinating is as we look at these numbers now starting to come in, and the fact that, yes, we have called the race for Donald Trump, one of the things that I think we're all going to be watching throughout the evening is the margin of victory, which would be an indication as to whether or not Nikki Haley will continue to go on or whether or not she will do what Ron DeSantis did, which is the next day say, I'm out.
She's saying, though, that they're staying in cheaper hotels. They're flying commercial for that reason. They want to make their money go as far as they can because she really wants to make it to Super Tuesday and let all of the states that come between now and then and on that night matter and hear from them, hear their votes.
Yeah, we shall see.
All right. Deputy Political Director Joe St. George now joins us from Bedford, New Hampshire. Joe, where do things go for here as we're talking about this?
Right.
If Nikki Haley, you know, we've called it for, we've projected that Donald Trump has won this, but if she comes close, where do things go from here for her?
Yeah, I think margins are going to matter. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're talking about a former president of the United States here, right? I mean, this is someone who was president of the United States for 4 years. This is now someone who has won the New Hampshire primary for 3 consecutive presidential cycles, 2016, 2020, 2024. And so Nikki Haley isn't going up against a governor or a senator or a political novice. It's a different operation. And obviously the fact that this was able to be called really at the top of the hour, the earliest we could call this race, certainly gives you the level of certainty in which our experts who do this for a living certainly feel at what this margin is going to be. Look, I don't have a crystal ball. My colleague Andrew Rafferty doesn't have a crystal ball. We can't tell you what the exact margins are going to be. We know that former President Trump's going to win. That's why we projected this race. But I can tell you, in talking with voters on the ground in New Hampshire these last several days, I picked up on something. I picked up on Republican voters, conservatives who participate in elections, who vote for Republicans in general elections. I picked up on them being worried about the future of democracy, worried about the temperament of former President Donald Trump. And if former President Trump is the Republican nominee, and let's be honest here, I mean, he won Iowa, he won New Hampshire very, very quickly tonight. He looks like he's certainly going to be eventually. Mr. Trump is going to have to find a way to bring back some Republicans that he may have lost along the way, that he may have lost as a direct result of what he said after the 2020 elections, that he may have lost as a result of all of the indictments. I think that's going to be a big general election question for him as we begin more and more to talk about November 2024 as opposed to maybe what may be next on the primary calendar, guys.
Joe, let me drill down on something that you said just a moment ago. We're looking at the numbers coming in right now for Donald Trump, 55.1%. But you're right. He is, in a very real sense, an incumbent Republican president that is running for re-election. If this were, for instance, Barack Obama running again, would we expect his numbers to be closer to 80, 90% versus 55%? Because one of the things that came out of Iowa was that, yes, he won, but a lot of people didn't show up. And you're right. I'm hearing those same undertones about, I'm not sure I like what I see.
Yes, and I think, look, I mean, former President Trump has, Del and Maritza, we as journalists have been talking about former President Trump very much dominating, being a part of the Republican conversation nationally for almost 10 years now. So this isn't an opportunity where voters in New Hampshire, and then we'll be talking about places like Arizona and Wisconsin and Michigan, Pennsylvania in the coming weeks and the coming months. This isn't something in which people are going to get to know him for the first time. No, Americans know who former President Trump was. He sat behind the desk in the Oval Office for 4 years. And these margins, you're hearing that number tonight, what he wins by. Remember, he needs Republicans in order to defeat President Biden in November, which is the ultimate goal here. And that's why I suspect whenever former President Trump approaches the microphones this evening, another call for unity. He stressed that in Iowa. Look for him to stress that again tonight whenever he takes to the microphones, because he needs more Republicans on his side come November than he is getting with these results that we're seeing in places like Iowa and New Hampshire, Del and Maritza.